Hey there, everyone. Welcome. Come on in. Today, I'm going to be talking about how we used our farm, our 16-acre farm, to earn passive income this year. So it's almost the end of the year. I know a lot of you have been watching this project for a little while. If you followed me on Facebook for a while, you know we bought a 16-acre farm in Leavenworth, Kansas, just about a year and a half ago now. And when we started this project, we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. So I'm very excited to share with you how it's gone so far this year and exactly what steps we've taken to monetize this property and turn it into multiple different streams of passive income, where we stand in comparison to how much we've invested in the property versus how much we've earned. And I'm just going to spill all the beans today. So if you're on here live, say live. If you're watching the replay, please comment replay so I know that you actually caught this training. And let me know if you have any specific questions on the topic of our farm as I get started. So I don't have any slides for today, and I actually am here in California this week, still visiting family. I've seen a lot of people over the last week that I haven't seen in years. In fact, I met a cousin yesterday that I hadn't met before ever, and she's 21 years old. So that just goes to show you how long it had been since I visited this part of the world. But it's been really wonderful. We're here for 2 weeks. But I still wanted to hop on live with you guys and say hi. Yes, I can't tell who that is, but hello. Thank you for coming live. Let me know if you have any questions about our farm. So to give you guys the very short version of the story, back in 2020, I sold my wedding business. So for those of you who haven't known me very long, I used to own a wedding business for many years. I've actually done over 300 weddings personally, small and large, both elopements, and then the largest wedding I ever did was 300 guests. So I love the wedding industry. It was absolutely a favorite of mine, but it was definitely trading time for money, right? And in fact, because the wedding industry mostly happens on the weekends, and my husband has a sales job where he worked mostly during the week, he complained a lot about the fact that we never saw each other. And he was very sad. And so eventually I decided, even though I loved my wedding business, it was just not really the best thing for my marriage. And so I sold it. And it ended up being a really good sale because a few months later, COVID happened. And so I was very grateful that I had gotten out of that industry temporarily. But that was when I started my online coaching program. And I wanted to help other business women to earn more profits and scale their businesses. And later on became a money coach, right? Well, over the next year, I noticed, and so did my husband, that I was not as happy as I had been when I owned a wedding business. So I decided, instead of going back and starting another wedding business, which would be a lot of work and trading time for money, we should just make our next investment property a wedding venue. So that was kind of the idea behind this 16-acre farm. And we started out just looking in the Midwest because that's where Ben's family is, and that's where we kind of wanted to settle for a while. And we were looking for a turnkey wedding venue. But even in the Midwest, the only turnkey wedding venues we could find that were farms and had all of our, checked all of our boxes were to the tune of $1, 2, even $3 million properties. And that was just a lot more than we had to spend on this particular investment. So we had to find something in our budget. And our budget for this project was about $500,000. So find us a farm for $500,000, we said to our real estate agent. And he did, right? So we found one property, and it was much more turnkey. It was already kind of being used as a wedding venue. It was just a really poorly designed wedding venue, honestly, which is great, right? When you're trying to buy a boring business, one of the things we talk about inside the passive income pathway is that one of the things you're looking for is a stale business model, right? So obviously that would have been great because it was already a wedding venue, but the owner just really sucked at promoting it, right? So that would have been easy peasy for us to build. But we got outbid on that one by someone who had a cash offer. We did not have $500,000 in cash. So we kept looking, and eventually we found this farm here in Kansas City. Not here, I'm in California right now. There, over there in Kansas City. And we decided to buy the farm, despite the fact that at the time when we bought it, the farmhouse had not been lived in for a number of years. It was a 100-year-old farmhouse. It had never been modernized. So it had old knob and tube electricity. It had never had a shower. It just had like one of those old bathtubs, right? And so it was like a big project to take on. And we knew that because, and this is something I want you guys to take note of, right? If you're watching this, take note of this. If you don't have the funds to buy the property in cash, right? There's two ways you can invest in a cash flowing asset. You can invest your time or you can invest your money. So obviously we did have to invest some money in order to buy the property, but because we didn't have enough cash to buy like a turnkey property, we were going to have to be willing to invest our time to turn it into a passive income stream. So that's what happened. So we bought the property, we signed the mortgage, I think in April of last year. So it's been about a year and 8 months or something like that now, right? And it wasn't even able to be moved into, right? So we had to rent an Airbnb in Kansas City while we started this project of turning this investment property into a cash flowing asset. So again, if you already have the funds, if you're like sitting on $500,000 in cash, then great, go buy a property that is going to be just a turnkey passive income stream. That's definitely possible to do, right? But if you're like us and we had about $50,000 in cash, not 500,000, then fine, right? You can use leverage, right? We did end up leveraging, meaning we bought the property with a mortgage, right? And you can also invest your time into turning it into a passive income stream. And that's what most people don't know how to do. They look at the property and they go, and I've had hundreds of people comment on my posts, comment on my TikTok channel saying, well, farm, that's not passive. There's no way a farm could be a passive income stream. So let me show you what most people are doing wrong when they buy a property like this is they look at it from the lens of trading time for money. And so that's what they end up doing, right? We have to flip the script. We have to think like an investor. So that's what I want to talk to you guys about today. More than anything, I want to share my journey with you, but also teach you how to look at the assets you probably already own or the next one you're about to buy, and look at it through the lens of an investor, not a businesswoman. Because that was the big mistake I made in the beginning, right? Was buying and building businesses that required me to work in them. And then two, how did I do it? So the first thing we did was we assessed the property. All right. This property had this old farmhouse, which needed to be renovated, wasn't livable yet. It had a 2-story red barn, which was awesome. That's what we have been looking for per our market research, which again, we talk about inside the Passive Income Pathway, doing that market research. If you're buying a business that you're hoping will become a boring business, you have to have product market fit, right? So we did our research to make sure that a red barn was what people wanted for a farm. And sure enough, it was the number one choice for a farm. A big red barn was the number one choice for a wedding venue in all of the US in the last 3 years. 3 years in a row, it's been the number one choice. So we're like, great, this already has product market fit in that sense, right? And then we also bought, the property also had 5 small little buildings on it. One of them was like falling apart. So clearly we weren't going to turn that into anything. But the other 3 were perfectly rehabable, right? So the first thing we did once we bought the properties, we started the work on the farmhouse, but we knew that that was going to be longer term. It wasn't going to be overnight. In fact, it took months and months and months of Ben going up there with an electrician, rewiring the entire home, me and Ben and, and the handyman demolitioning, is that a word? Demoing the interior walls and rebuilding some entire rooms from scratch. Like it took a lot of work, right? So over the time period when we're working on the farmhouse, I went, all right, how can we start earning income immediately from this business or from this farm, right? So the first thing I noticed was we had a lot of neighbors who came all over, most of the time showing up unannounced, and were just welcoming us to the area. And several of them were farmers. And the farmers were very interested in what we were going to be doing with our field, because the property itself is this big, long, kind of thin property. And all the buildings are on this one little patch in the corner, right? We've got farm, barn, and then a bunch of little buildings all in this little patch. And then there's this big, huge field that's like 12 acres, right? And so they're like, hey, what are you going to do with that? And I went, well, what would you like to do with it? What would you do with it if you had it, right? Because remember, one of our tips inside the Passive Income Pathway is asking experts, right? Ask experts for advice, network with experts if you aren't going to be asking for their mentorship for free, right? So befriend them. So we befriended a bunch of farmers, and sure enough, several of them asked us if they could rent our field to build or to grow cash crops on the property. So the options were corn, which is very lucrative, but also um, uses a lot of chemicals that we didn't really want to have around us and probably weren't going to be wanted on the farm if we're going to be renting out the farm as a wellness retreat. You can't have like chemicals in your field, right? And also a cornfield doesn't look very aesthetic after it's been harvested. It kind of looks like dead and ugly. So we decided not to go with corn, even though it would have made us more money, right? And instead we decided to rent out the field to a local cattle rancher who wanted to just grow hay for his own cattle. And so great, it wasn't a ton of money, but a few $100s at every harvest, and they do all the work themselves. They plant it themselves, they fertilize it themselves. They are doing every single minute of the work. I literally do nothing. I can sit out there with a lemonade and make money, right? So that was great because it made this beautiful field that looks aesthetic any time of year and was bringing us hundreds of dollars in passive income. Okay, so that was kind of our first ever passive income stream on the farm. Not very large. Next, I looked at the other outbuildings. While we're renovating this farmhouse and trying to turn it into something, and while we're waiting to find an investor or find the funding to start on the barn, was there something we could do with the other buildings? So one building really stuck out in particular. It was the old smokehouse on the farm. So when they slaughtered an animal or whatever, they would take it into the smokehouse and smoke the meat. So it was this really cute little shed, essentially, right? And these days it seats about 10 people. And with the help of one handyman over a weekend, I managed to fully renovate the smokehouse and turn it into a wedding chapel. So that was our second passive income stream. And so far, we've had several weddings this year alone, and we've got a few more booked for next year just inside the smokehouse. These are mostly elopements, but we've also just used it as a get ready room for outdoor weddings. We were able to have some large weddings as well. Just renting out the field in this tiny little smokehouse chapel that we renovated over a weekend. So just with that chapel and the field being rented out for field weddings and outdoor weddings, we've already made close to $10,000 in fully passive income from the farm, okay? Just by renovating that one little building and then renting out the field. So these are not weddings I'm planning. These are not weddings I'm having to do anything to set up or break down or do anything like that. We're literally just renting the space, and they show up, they use it, they clean up after themselves, and they leave. And if they don't clean up after themselves, there is a deposit that they won't get back because I'll pay someone to clean up for them, right? So again, fully passive. All it took was renovating one building over a weekend. So then we finally finished the Airbnb and we were able to move into the top floor and start renting out the entire bottom floor of this 100-year-old farmhouse as an Airbnb. And today, again, we've been making about $500 to $600 per month in passive income just renting out that first floor. So once we finish the entire renovation of the farmhouse, because we got it to the point where it was like livable and kind of cute, but it still needs a lot of work. So once it's actually fully completed, we will move out of the farmhouse, probably buy another home or rent a place in Kansas if we want to stay here, and rent out the entire Airbnb. And that's when we can start holding like retreats and things like that. So like I said, so far we've created 3 assets that are paying us passively every single month from the farm itself. None of this is requiring additional work on our part. So there's no trading time for money once the asset is built and renovated and promoting itself, right? So that's kind of the ongoing project of the farm, and that's a little update of how it's been going. If you have any questions at all, feel free to comment below. I'm happy to answer them for you. Some commonly asked questions I'm being asked are, how did we fund the farm? So we just used a mortgage, and we were able to do that because we did intend and do intend and are living on the farm for the first 2 years while we complete the renovations project. If you're not going to live on the property, then you probably won't be able to get a mortgage for your property, but there are other funding options that I'd be happy to discuss with you. If you want to hop on a quick call with me, later this week. Another commonly asked question is, how did we find a construction company to work with? And honestly, we just found a friend of a friend. We were very lucky that Ben already had lived in this area and he knew people in town. And so someone he knew someone. And we were able to find a handyman who's been wonderful. He knows how to do the electrician work. He's licensed to do all of these types of things. And he's done really great work on our farm so far. So if you are local to Kansas and you want his name, I'd be happy to share his name and contact info with you. Anyway, those are all the most commonly asked questions I get about the farm. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to comment below. Otherwise, thank you so much for jumping on with me today, and I will talk to you guys soon.